Well, a game where the Canucks were the better team for a rare occasion, albeit against the Chicago Blackhawks, but it is a tough game to lose. 1-0 the final score here on Sunday, November 21st. This was a game that the Canucks kind of had circled. It was one where they're going against a team that has been worse than them so far this season, like really bad, on a bit of a run since firing their head coach. Marc-Andre Fleury has been excellent, but the Canucks, in the state they are in, they needed this game. It was a game against a bad opponent to end a homestand and a game that they needed to get back on track. Sure, were the Canucks the better team? That would be a fair thing to say. However, you got to pull out a win. Look, you can run into a hot goalie, on occasion, and it happened earlier in the season with Thomas Greiss. We see it happening with Marc-Andre Fleury tonight, but there's no real excuse for not getting the puck in the net, especially when you're getting 40 shots on goal. The team just has to convert. And the third period, they didn't give themselves enough of a chance to convert, especially when they had about 16-minute stretches where they didn't get a single shot on goal. So we're going to go through a recap of the game, my thoughts on the game, my opinions, and then we'll get all of your thoughts, your opinions. As always, you guys know the drill at this point. And to preface this, I had a tweet this morning and I said, look, my two teams are playing today. The Seahawks are playing today. Seahawks going against Colt McCoy, and then the Canucks are going against a really not good Chicago Blackhawks team, and I fully expect them both to lose. I was right. Unfortunately, I was right, and a rough Sunday of sports for me. So it's the Canucks, it's the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks started terribly. They fired their coach, Jeremy Colliton. They've been 4-1 since then. Look, actually 5-1 since then after their win tonight. It's almost as if firing a coach can help a team. Crazy thought. They're coming off a back-to-back. So this is a game where the Canucks are against a tough, or not a tough opponent, but an opponent that's sort of in tough. They've been not playing well on a bit of a run right now, but coming off of a back-to-back where they played literally 22 hours previously. This should be a game that the Canucks should be able to just run away with in theory, right? We have Chase Young coming back to the lineup. First period, early Canucks power play. Connor Garland makes a nice move, gets tripped about 45 seconds into the game. So an early power play chance for the Canucks to set the tone, get an early goal, and just sort of, this should have been a game that they should have won, right? So they should just go out here, score a goal, move along, get a few goals later on, walk away with this game. Power play one gets a flurry of chances, no pun intended, but the pun was very intended. Shorty later said, used flurry as a pun, and it made me mad because I had already written this out in my game notes, but they got maybe 4 shots on a scramble in tight to the net. Then they have a bumper play that nearly works. Horvat misses the net high, but he had the right side of the net wide open. So the penalty is killed off by Chicago, but 6 shots on goal from this power play, which is, it was a good power play. Unfortunately, Tyler Mott takes a slashing penalty, the first test tonight for the penalty kill. Juho Lammikko was excellent on this first penalty kill for the Canucks. They kill it off 1-for-1 on the night. Big props to the Canucks penalty kill going 1-for-1 to start this game. So the Canucks really outplayed the Blackhawks in the first period. Shots were 15-6, but the score is still tied at 0. So we go to the second period, and this is our first look at the or not our first look, but another look at the Pettersson, Besser, and Dickinson unit that ended up as a unit together. In the first period, I didn't like the look of this unit. I thought Dickinson looked a step behind. He was never where Pettersson and Besser thought he was going to be. Things weren't working. They do get a couple good chances early in the second, though. Besser ends up all alone with a nice pass in the right-hand face-off circle, rips it off the far post. A few minutes later, 9.5 in, Bo Horvat, slick little play, gets the puck from a skate to a stick on the rush in, leaves Rickman Larsson. Also fires it off that exact same post that Brock Besser had hit about 7 or 8 minutes earlier. And then a couple minutes later, Elias Pettersson in on the rush, catches the outside of a post as he tries to make a little move in tight. So the Canucks just getting crushed by posts, Marc-Andre Fleury, all of the above. Connor Garland takes a penalty with about 8.5 to go in the second period for an offensive zone hook. Demko makes some solid saves, and then Kurashev takes a penalty for the Blackhawks to end the penalty. So the Canucks are officially 2 for 2 on the power play at this point. The Canucks get about 1:15 on the power play. We have Pettersson putting one over the net. Horvat with a good chance from the high slot. Can't get anything going. Still tied at 0. Last 3 minutes, the Canucks try out the Pettersson, Garland, Podkolzin line. This was sick. These three together were so fun to watch. They go on a tear for about 2 minutes in the offensive zone, absolutely dominating play, chance after chance. We have Vasily Podkolzin gets a cross-ice pass from Connor Garland, catches the post. We have Elias Pettersson trying to make a move in tight, but Fleury stayed with him there. And then they go off, and then Besser, Miller, and Dickinson come out, and they also put up some good chances, but they can't beat Fleury. So 2 really, really good periods from the Canucks. Again, against a bad team who is on a back-to-back. We can't put too much stock into it. We can give them a little bit of praise for being the better team through 40 minutes. Shots after 2 periods were 30-13 for Vancouver. Now we go to the third period. We have Hagel, who scores the only goal for the Blackhawks. But before that, he trips JT Miller in the Blackhawks zone. It goes uncalled. Fans really wanted a penalty there. A minute later, he goes and scores. So, it's one of those scenarios where maybe the refs doing a little bit of game management, trying not to have too much of an impact on the game. Well, the guy they didn't give the penalty to goes and scores, tips in a shot from the point from Gustafsson, and it's 1-0 Chicago. The Canucks don't get a shot on goal in the third period for 7 minutes. A game where it was 0-0, you dominated the first 2 periods, you're now down a goal, and you go 7 minutes without a shot on goal. And we've seen this a lot from the Canucks lately. We've seen a lot of times where the Canucks just have these long stretches of 8 to 10 minutes without getting shots on goal. Hamonic finally gets the first shot of the period for the Canucks. And then a minute later, we have Tanner Pearson hitting the crossbar. Then the Blackhawks get a power play with 7.5 minutes to go. JT Miller, sort of a bad giveaway. Oliver Ekman-Larsson forced to hook his man. It looked stick on stick to me. I don't love the call, but it was made. And this is a good penalty kill again. The Canucks go 3 for 3 on the PK tonight. And do I have that in my pluses? I'm going to put that in the pluses. 3 for 3 on the penalty kill. Canucks then go to the power play with about 2 minutes and 18 seconds to go. So this is their chance to tie the game. Last 2 minutes of the game, they're on the power play. You have to score. They pulled Demko with about 1:40 to go. JT Miller has some chances. We then get a Chicago timeout. Then we have Elias Pettersson just ripping shots from his spot. Fleury forced to fight the first one off, makes a good pad save on the second one. Vancouver takes a timeout. There's an icing with a second left, and the game's over. Canucks can't capitalize. Shots in the third period, 10-9 for Vancouver, but they were all late in the third period, and we'll get to that in my minuses as always. So Canucks out shooting something like 40 to 24 was the final shots. Canucks were the better team tonight, couldn't beat Fleury. And you know what? Part of being the better team is being able to put the puck in the net, and they just weren't able to do so. All right, pluses, minuses. Let's start with the positive. Let's start with the pluses. First off, if you look analytically at this game, you go to Natural Stat Trick, a website that I've liked to look at quite a bit. Expected goals in this game, if you include special teams, Canucks, if the average shot, I don't know how to explain it, but basically based on shot location and timing and the passes leading up to it, all this stuff, the Canucks were expected to score 3.73 goals tonight. So Marc-Andre Fleury stopping everything, obviously, and expected goals against 1.56. So Demko also had an excellent night, stopping 23 of 24. Definitely not his fault on this one, but the Blackhawks just not allowing any goals. Other pluses. Vasily Podkolzin. Vasily Podkolzin had an excellent game tonight. He's throwing the body around. He had a really good sort of reverse hit on Seth Jones. He was making good passes. He was making good plays. He was all over the place out there. Excellent game from Vasily Podkolzin. We're seeing his ice time. We had been seeing his ice time creep up a little bit. Only 13.5 minutes tonight. Again, they're desperately trying to score a goal late. But 2 shots for him, 2 hits, and a block. And he won a face-off. He is now 2 for 2 in his career in the face-off circle. A good game all around for Vasily Podkolzin. Thatcher Demko, again, you got to give some props to him, stopping 23 of 24. Connor Garland was fantastic again tonight. He has been so good. And that little glimpse we saw with him, Pettersson, and Podkolzin looked really fun. I hope they go back to that, and I hope it yields some results because it's a fun line that I'd like to see together quite a bit. The first 2 periods, an obvious plus, and then the penalty kill going 3 for 3 tonight, a plus as well. On the minus side, the posts. I don't know if maybe the nets got shrunk. They're not regulation or something. The Canucks just were glued to the posts. Something like 5 or 6 posts hit in this game, maybe more. I don't know. The Canucks just couldn't really get much going. Travis Hamonic, I thought didn't have a great game. That's kind of it. I just don't think Hamonic played well. He was someone who sort of stood out negatively to me. He did play 20 minutes tonight, so a lot of time for him to have a negative impact, but 2 giveaways on the scorecard tonight. And I just don't think he had an excellent showing. What I really want to talk about, though, actually, let's go through the other things first, and then we'll go to the big one. JT Miller still loving to make plays up the middle in his own zone that are costing the team. That led to an Oliver Ekman-Larsson penalty in the third period that have been rough. Another -1 and 2 during the homestand. This is a homestand where the Canucks were supposed to be, if they had any shot of getting back in it, and again, it was a real long shot, but this was a real good opportunity to do so, right? You have 3 games at home. You have one against the Jets, who they beat impressively. They had the Avalanche, who they lost to, but the Blackhawks was supposed to be that game that they could go out, take a win from. It was sort of a scheduled loss for the Blackhawks, which is a term that some people like to throw around, where back-to-backs, bad team, all the above, and they couldn't get a win, so they go 1 and 2 on the homestand and fall to 6-11 and 2. But my biggest minus for the night was the third period, and it is the fact that the Canucks go 7 minutes without a shot. They had all the momentum in the first 2 periods, dominating play. They come out after the second intermission. They get 0 shots on goal for about 7 minutes or so. They finally get a couple. Hamonic with a weak shot from the point. They get another one somewhere else. And then they go another 9.5 minutes without a shot. They don't get a shot from a forward until there's less than 3 minutes left in the third period. Think about that. They go the first 17 minutes of a third period, most of which they were down a goal, without a shot from a forward. I think Hamonic had 2, Hughes had 1, and then they finally had a couple shots late. Sure, there was the Pearson one that went off the post, but if you don't hit the net, it doesn't count. So it's just crazy to me, right? They can go this 7-minute gap and then an almost 10-minute gap without a shot in a game that they are trailing. It's just rough. Anyways, that's most of my thoughts on this game. It was a game where the Canucks should have won. They were the better team, but they didn't get the job done. And again, we can praise Marc-Andre Fleury, and we can say, yeah, they ran to a hot goalie, but we're at a part of the season where the Canucks can't afford to be like, hot goalie, moral victory. They gave a good effort, but they just couldn't beat the goalie. Yeah, you got to beat the goalie. You got to score. If they score 2 goals tonight, they win. They had 40 shots. You got to get something past the goaltender, and it's just not good enough, right? The Canucks now have 14 points, and they are 19 games into the season. It's just not good enough. I'm going to do a little bit of math. 82 over 19 times 14. Canucks are on pace for 60 points still. 60 points. That's not good enough. And again, we're getting into that thing where it's like, okay, well, they could go and fire the coach. And we saw Chicago's done that, and they went from basically losing their first 9 games to being 6-10 and 2, which was what the Canucks were going into this game. They've won 6 of their last, what's the number on that? 6 of their last 10. That's not bad for a team that started off really poorly. So just a rough game. And a sad one, right? A game where the Canucks could have won and they didn't pull it out. Let's get to your thoughts, your opinions. As always, we'll pull them up on screen. We're not going to spend too much time on them tonight. I do need to eat. I have not had dinner tonight. So let's get into these. And if you're just tuning in now, you can always rewind after, catch the beginning of the show, or you can find it on your favorite podcast platforms. I do want to start getting get those likes up, subs up. You guys know the deal. Trying to hit 3K in a couple weeks here, ideally. All right. KD saying, I'm just sad. Fair. Marcus saying, I can't believe what I just witnessed. I can believe it. Quattrop saying, losing to Winnipeg is worse than losing to Chicago is worse than if they lost to Winnipeg. Yeah. I mean, going into this 3-game homestand, and if I looked at it and said, okay, the Canucks are going to go 1 and 2, I would have said, okay, they're going to lose to Winnipeg and Colorado. Their one win will be against Chicago. But they need more than that if they want to stay alive here. Lefty saying better teams win hockey games. Yeah. If the Canucks had been playing, to their caliber that we've seen, or that we expected to see this season, not that we have seen this season, they probably would have pulled this one out. BL Tube saying better team through 40, 5 posts, but you still have to win the game. Yeah, I agree. They can have all the shots they want, but if you don't score, it doesn't matter. And the heat map is something that I do like to look at, and I'll see if I can pull this up on screen here. Again, it's kind of tricky because of the way it works, but I'll see if I can. Screenshot. Can I find it? I just want you guys to see screenshot, add to page. There we go. So this is covering my face, the heat map of shots. On the right is where the Canucks shots came from tonight, or at least shot attempts. You can see a lot of them sort of coming from that Elias Pettersson zone on the ice, and a handful in front, right? A decent amount sort of on the left side of the crease there on the picture here. But look at the amount of shot attempts that they had from the outside, right? Look how much, again, I'm going to try to get my face in here. Look how much just sort of spread out. And for you audio listeners, I know this isn't a great segment here, but a lot coming from outside the slot, from the face-off circles, from the walls, one from behind the net. You compare that to Chicago, which I'll pull the other side. There's a big hot spot right in the middle. Lots of their shots coming from, they only had like 20 shots or so, but there's sort of a line there in the middle, and then a handful of shots from either side, but almost everything coming from the middle of the ice. So shots don't tell the whole story, but again, the Canucks should have scored more goals. They just need to capitalize. Lefty all around saying no one rushing the net, not enough toughness in front of the net. That, might be fair. It wasn't something I really clued in on. But, that definitely could have helped. Wolf Girl saying the guys we pay all the money to score goals are not doing their job. Yeah. And I think lots of them played well. And I think Elias Pettersson played fine. Vasily Podkolzin played well. I thought Miller played well in the offensive zone. Garland played well. But again, their job is to score goals. Their job's to beat the goalie, and it just didn't get done tonight. Katie saying he didn't like Hamnick today. I concur there. Total Biscuit Fanboy saying same team, no finish. Yep, no finish tonight for sure. Agam saying the final power play was pathetic. So predictable. They were setting Pettersson up for the one tire. Why did no one else shoot at all? I don't think it was that bad. I thought the final power play was fine. I think they probably had like 5 shots or so on it. Yeah, they were definitely trying to run it through Pettersson, but Pettersson is the best scoring chance there. They could have probably had a couple less passes, but I think the idea on that last power play was fine. And if anyone was going to score there, it was probably going to be Pettersson. So I don't hate the idea. It just didn't work out. Wolf Girl saying positive. Podkolzin looked awesome. Fully agree. Debut Hunter saying Garland had one of the better pointless games I've seen someone play. Yeah. Garland has been one of the real bright spots on this team so far. Excellent night tonight. His puck control, the moves he was making, which obviously puck control is a big part of, were excellent from Connor Garland. Marcus also giving a plus to Kyle Burrows in this game. I do agree. I thought he was one of the better players on the Canucks ice tonight. Again, the least ice time of all defensemen, 14 minutes tonight for Kyle Burrows. 3 hits, a block, 2 shots on goal from Burrows. I do want to note some of the shots. Connor Garland had 6 shots on goal. Pettersson had 5, which is definitely something to keep track of. Anyone with like a low amount of shots? Besser only had 1 shot on goal tonight. You'd like to see more from him. But other than that, not too much else to complain about there. Kai saying, can't deny the Canucks' effort tonight, but I don't understand throwing the blender in the third when the lines are looking great. Yeah, and it didn't work, right? I mean, the Canucks were worse in the third period than they were in the first 2. So, yeah, the blender is kind of iffy. Lefty saying that even Pullman's game is getting better. Yeah, I didn't really notice Pullman tonight, except for I think there was 1 decent rush he went on, but I thought he was fine. Let's find some good ones here. A bit of complaints about Bo Horvat. Might be fair. He had 3 shots tonight, 2 hits and a block, 20 minutes of ice time. Yeah, there was that one miss, right? That one miss on the power play where they made the bumper play, and the whole right side of the net was open. He just got a little too much of it and went over. You'd like to see those go in. Bo Horvat's a quite streaky player, right? We see it a lot from him where like he has 0 points in the last 6 games for the Vancouver Canucks. Bo Horvat does not have a point in 6 games. It might be longer. No, 7 games ago, he had the 3-point night against Dallas. But he's a streaky player. 6-game slump for him in a time of the season where they need him to produce, and it just isn't happening. So yeah, something to keep track of for sure. And if the Canucks are going to get back on track, he is a guy that you need to rely on for that to happen. 10 points in 18 games so far for Horvat. But 58.5% in the faceoff circle. He's crushing it there. Agam saying the Canucks played a terrible, tired Chicago team. They played amazing and still lost. Season's over. I don't think today's the reason the season's over, but definitely isn't helping. Troll Biscuit Fanboy saying no rebounds because every shot missed the net or hits a post. I'm not going to complain about posts that are hit because you're a millimeter off from scoring basically. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of rebounds coming out. Fleury did a good job of that though. A lot of that does come down to the goaltender playing really well. But yeah, fair enough. Quattrop saying, why do the Canucks make 5 to 8 passes in their own zone so often just to get out of the zone? Other teams make like 2 to 3 to get it out of the zone. That is kind of fair. The Canucks do struggle to break out of the defensive zone, and it didn't hurt them that much tonight. I mean, the one Miller play was rough, but it is something that is a sort of a trend. And yeah, you do see other teams just sort of snap it out and move up. I haven't watched, I haven't focused on it too much on sort of like the film side, so I don't have a real diagnosis on that. But it is an issue for sure. Leo saying the best games the Canucks played this season in his opinion. Detroit, where they lost 2-1. Yep, they had 41 shots on Thomas Greiss, who was an absolute wall. Anaheim, where they lost 3-2 in OT, which was how long ago? It was like a week ago now. That was on the 9th, so about a week and a half ago. And then this game, all 3 were losses. Yeah, I mean, they were... I think you could put the Dallas game up there. But other than that, these were good games the Canucks played. They just couldn't get anything done. Lefty saying you can't blame the coach for Pettersson, Besser, and Horvat's play. They need to blame it on themselves. Sure, yeah, part of it relies on the players not playing up to their potential. But also, that's kind of the coach's job is to put out strategy and encouragement of players and allow players to play to their potential, right? Because otherwise, what does a coach do? What would firing a coach do if it doesn't have some sort of effect on how players play, right? Otherwise, a coach would be absolutely useless. So I think, sure, yeah, some of the blame lies on the players themselves, but also, I mean, it's the coach's job to get the most out of his players. And if that's not happening, and it's not happening with a lot of players, right? It's not just one. It is a group of players, and it's the best players on the team. Maybe there's a little bit more to that than just being on the players. I am going to take a couple more before we wrap up. We're going to do a little bit quicker tonight because, again, we're kind of at the point where we're sort of repeating the same things. Every game is a loss, it feels like, other than that one game a few nights ago against Winnipeg, which was fun. We had some fun with that, but we're seeing, the basically the exact same things over and over. And I can't keep talking about the same things over and over until something changes. And also, Gmod, your VIP thing doesn't show up in the one chat thing I use, but thank you for renewing your VIP, saying Puckolson and Garland looking great. The rest hurts. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. BL Tubes saying they're going to stink into the last 20 games and going to run or ruin the draft spot. Yeah, I mean, we have seen that before. That would be really depressing. But the end of the season would be fun, at least in some case. Dean saying, remember how exciting and electric Pettersson was the right year? I think you just mean the last couple of years, just completely gone. Yeah, he just hasn't looked like himself. And it's a big reason the Canucks are losing, right? If Elias Pettersson is Elias Pettersson in all of these 1-goal games the Canucks have had, I kind of want to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The Canucks have played 10 of their 19 games have been 1-goal games. Some of those were wins. Most of them were losses. Almost all of them were losses. But yeah, if you have guys like Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser playing to their potential, that might be an entirely different outlook, right? Maybe they win 5 more games and we're talking about an entirely different team. Ben saying at this point, I don't see any GM or coaching changes this season. Yep. And again, I mean, this is something that we keep talking about where it's almost the worst case scenario, right? Team loses a close game where they were the better team. Well, ownership can look at that and be like, well, they were the better team tonight, and ignore the fact of the Blackhawks being bad on a back-to-back, and X, Y, and Z other issue, that, can sort of poke holes in that argument. Yeah, I mean, if it hasn't happened yet, what's it going to take, right? Is it going to take another like 4-game losing streak? I have trouble rooting for something like that happening, but it definitely could be the case. Dimitri saying, how can you say Pettersson's the best scoring threat? Maybe in the past, but not this season at all. It's just based off of his shot. And I mean, you look at the way they have it set up, and we can disagree about the setup in the offensive zone all day. And again, I'm not a big fan of it, but they're on that 6-on-4. And the real options are you can have a Quinn Hughes shot from the point and hope it sneaks through and gets tipped or whatever. That's a pretty low percentage play. You could have Besser or Miller shooting from the opposite side. But I still think your best shooter, your best pure shooter on the team, regardless of how he's played, and I don't think Pettersson's issue in his play has been his shot. I mean, his shot hasn't been perfect, but a lot of it has been his skating, his confidence, and just lack of sort of awareness. But I think his shot is still there. And we saw Pettersson's one shot during that 2-minute power play that completely handcuffed Fleury. It was a shot that was pretty savable, but he really struggled to handle it. And there was the other one that Fleury had to make a great save on. I think that your best plays are either the Horvat bumper play, which is going to be tough because they're really trying to lock down the front of the net in that scenario, or the Pettersson one-timer. So that's the play that they ran with. So I don't disagree with the idea there. Nicholas saying who my player of the game was, Vasily Podkolzin. Or you could also give it to Demko. Demko was great. But I mean, if it's anyone in the game, it's Fleury, obviously. But for the Canucks, Podkolzin's my number 1. Garland's my number 2. Demko is my number 3. Anything else I want to read here? Irwin saying that the effort was there other than the session they got scored on. Yeah, I mean, the first 2 periods was great. But the first 7 minutes of the third and sort of the middle 8 minutes of the third weren't. Irwin then saying the messy passes, shot choices, and player spacing screams out to me that if their systems, they're totally not working. Yeah, and I don't know if that really falls into account as much this game, but I think over the course of the season, that's definitely a fair criticism for sure. The Elder saying, I'm convinced the team is cursed. Well, I don't think there's much evidence against that, even if you don't believe in curses. Sam Wu saying, so we're the better team against a team that's less talented and still lost. That's effing depressing. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I think everyone's sort of on the same page there. It is depressing. It's frustrating. It's annoying. I mean, we can talk about how this season might be done. But just for my own sanity, I want to see wins, right? We're starting to get to points where I'm not watching the game for enjoyment's sake. I'm more watching it for the post game, for this stream more so. That was the case with the Jets game 2 days ago. If I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't have watched that game, which is pretty rare for me, but I just wouldn't have. It was a Friday night. I would have gone and done something else. But you know, it just gets frustrating. And with that, we are going to wrap up for the night. Oh, I did want to talk about the games coming up. That's the one thing I haven't mentioned. So the Canucks going now on a 5-game road trip. They're 6-11-2. We're talking about a team that needs to win 4 of these games. And again, every single sort of mini stretch of games, it comes up and we say, okay, what do the Canucks have to do to sort of stay alive? And every time that they go below 500 on one, like that, this homestand, they went 1-2. We now have to start looking at, okay, what do they have to do to sort of get back in the season? If they go 3-2, which would be a good road trip, it's not good enough because now the team's 9-13-2. So they're still so far behind the 8 ball and they're just running out of time. This is a team that has to win 4 games, basically, to be at least remotely in the mix. That means they have to go beat Pittsburgh, beat Columbus, maybe lose to Boston, beat Montreal, beat Ottawa. Montreal and Ottawa are the winnable games in this road trip, like the most winnable games. Columbus hasn't looked great either. But if the Canucks go 0-3 leading into the Montreal-Ottawa games, then who cares at that point? Yeah, you can go beat them. But it doesn't really matter. So Canucks don't play until Wednesday. That means tomorrow night, Tuesday night, no show from me unless obviously something big happens, which I am doubting. If there was a coaching change or a management change, expect a stream that night that it happens. But other than that, it's probably not going to. So the Canucks Penguins Wednesday, 4 p.m. Canucks Blue Jackets on Friday. Canucks Bruins on Sunday, and then so 3 games in the next week or so. We do have Canucks After Dark tomorrow, every Monday night, a show where Canuck Clay and I talk about the Canucks and cry on each other's shoulders for an hour. So if you want to come join that, there should be a link to Canucks After Dark in the description. You can just search for it on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. You guys know the deal at this point. You can go follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, do all that good stuff. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more of these. Hit the like button and all of the normal things. We're going to wrap up there. Have a good night. And hopefully we have a win to talk about on